right there. Alright, we'll get the meeting underway, folks. Welcome to the ATA for our October meeting. I've just got a little video I'm just going to start off, which is the UN Climate Change Conference, which we just had. And it's quite a topical video, I think, that the ATA should pick up as our theme song. Was playing before.
One day, we will wake up to find that the energy that powers the alarm clock came from the breeze through the trees the night before. And we will go to work that morning riding the rays of the sun. It will light our cities and power our businesses. It will warm our homes and cool our workplaces. It will reduce sources of conflict and fuel our economies. It will connect us all. It won't scar the land or poison the seas. The food we eat will be good for our bodies and good for the planet. The weather that day won't make us worry for tomorrow. There will be more jobs and less disease. The sea level will stop rising. And species will stop dying. The question is, how do we get to that day from where we are today? All 7.3 billion of us. We start by deciding that beyond our doubts and differences, such a day truly exists. And that is something each of us can do today. We can make today the day we stop thinking that the changes required to get there are impossible and beyond us, and start realizing that they are not only possible, but what the future requires of us. We must stop turning from the warnings of science and fear and denial, and instead turn toward the solutions and partnerships we need. We can make today the day we stop pointing at each other in blame, and instead chart a new course together. We have never faced a crisis this big, but we have never had a better opportunity to solve it. We have everything we need to wake up to a different kind of world. We need our leaders to be brave and their choices to be bold. They will either remember us as the generation that destroyed its home, or the one that finally came to respect it. We have every reason in the world to act. We can't wait until tomorrow. This is our only home. You can choose today to make a world of difference.
So I saw that in the link the other day and I thought that's really topical. It's given up as going to that sort of UN leader conference, I think it's really, it's if nothing else, it says that they're being forced to look at the issue. Whether they do something, it's up to us to keep making the action. So we're going to introduce Ollie Clark from Muradel now, who's going to tell us all about how we can help one of those steps, which is making petroleum from algae. Jump in, Ollie.
Much, and we'll start.
Keep going. Keep going. Yes.
That's it.
Okay. There you go. You want to use the mouse or is the feedstock?
Yes, well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start by thanking your association for the opportunity of coming and talking to you about this project of ours tonight. And let's get started. I would make a couple of comments. This is a sort of a slide that you apparently need to run at these shows. And I think if you were to spend a moment, you probably realise what it means is don't believe a word I say, and if you do, don't tell anybody. Anyway, first, marine algae to biofuels is what this talk's entitled, and I think that the topic, in a broad sense, comparing the Muradel route to crude oil is very much, I think, an alternative concept to traditional form of taking fossil fuels through to transport fuels, or fossil fuel through to transport fuels. However, I must say that we do make use of a fair few existing technologies on the way. Now, my talk tonight is not particularly technology focused. It's like fairly general, and I apologise to anybody in the room who thought I might get a lecture on the finer points of phycology and algae technology, but I'm not really in a position to do that. So I apologise in advance if you're expecting it. So I'm going to really address these matters, what our project is all about, a brief history of the company, the who's and where's and all that stuff, and why we're doing this, and where we currently stand, and where we go from here. On the table at the front, I left a stack of a new brochure that we've produced, and I would encourage you to take one of those, and got any queries, give us a call sometime. By the way, I think there'll be time at the end for questions if anybody's got any, or if something comes up that occurs to you at the moment, we'll see where we can handle it there. Now, so what are we about? Well, we're about a company called Muradel, Proprietary Limited. The name derives from the Murdoch University over in Perth and the Adelaide University right here. The company grows a particular strain of a microalgae species known Tetrasilnus. It does this in shallow, outdoor paddle wheel ponds. And part of the stream, algae inoculated into the ponds and grows very quickly, which is why we work with algae. And as the paddle wheels are pushing around quite slowly, we take a percentage out and we put it through an electroflocculation process, which sort of forms it. It coagulates a lot of the algae, and it goes into a separating tank, and the bottom of the tank is a sludge is formed, and the supernatant at the top of the separating tank is put back into the paddle pond. So the sludge is then converted via centrifugation to more of a paste, and the paste is put through a particularly smart piece of equipment. We think it's called a subcritical water reactor, which converts the paste into a kerogen from which the crude green oil is extracted. Now, the green crude is pretty much the same. It's analogous, to put it mildly, to fossil fuel oil, fossil crude, and can be fractionated in a refinery to do products that the transport fuels, which we're all familiar with, the so-called drop-in fuels. Over a period of years, and after expenditure in the vicinity of 20 million nowadays, we have built a demonstration plant at Whyalla, and which we think might be seen as just one module for things that will happen in the future for rather large plants. In fact, we expect that we might be looking at big farms that they might incorporate maybe 1,000 of these 1 hectare ponds. So we're increasingly confident that our technology will lead to the development of large, as I say, 1,000 hectare farms, which will play an increasing role in the production of crude oil sustainably in Australia, but also well beyond our shores. In more recent times, we've trialled our subcritical water reaction process to the conversion technology on other interesting alternative feedstocks with great success, and I'll return to that subject a little later on. So we're principally about algae for sure, and we'll continue to be because we're right onto that and we can grow up very quickly and continuously, but there are some other things out there which rather surprised us, and we've done a little bit of conversion of these for the people who produce these feedstocks, usually as a nuisance, and we think there might be a future in using this particular part of our technology in that area as well. Now, a little bit of history. Oh, we're on it already. Going way back, and I hope this isn't boring to you, but the production of crude oil and natural gas from algae is almost as old as the Earth itself, and some people talk about 100 billion years, others talk about even longer periods. It's generally acknowledged that the oil and gas reservoirs were created that many years ago from algae, first group things on the Earth. And the algae were collected as they would, wherever they would, and they were pressure cooked by the Earth's transformations, many of those it has been over all those years. But the idea of doing what we're doing, it's been around in the world for a while. Plenty of people have thought there must be a way forward, and quite a few years of development has been happening right here in Australia. Here, several serious attempts have been made, no doubt spurred on by the 1970 oil price crisis, and I'm sure people in the room would know that oil prices jumped like about 10-fold or 20-fold or something in the early 70s and again in the late 70s. And I think that had a lot to do with people getting a bit interested in other areas of producing oil, and also it coincided with an enormous breakout and outbreak, tonnages and tonnages of a freshwater species of algae, actually called Botrococcus, that appeared on the surface of the brand new Darwin Reservoir, when it was commissioned, and this was in about 1975 or 76. It attracted the attention of the scientific community and particularly the defence departments. So also, right here in South Australia, there have been a number of initiatives, and they're the ones I'd like to just deal with for a moment. First of all, going way back to 1999, a company was established called SQC, standing for Sequestration of Carbon, and it was formed in Port Lincoln, and it was to study in detail this particular freshwater species found on the Darwin Reservoir, and many strains of that species were picked up and put in the laboratory, and we attempted to grow them quickly, etc., etc. And we collected these various strains of the species from all over South Australia and the Northern Territory, analysed propagation rates, etc., etc. Then a little later, in 2007, the phycology group from the Murdoch University over in Perth and the chemical engineering department at the Adelaide University joined forces to study and develop options based on strains of the saltwater strain of algae known as Tetraselmis. There you see a very world-famous phycologist, Professor Michael Borovitska from Murdoch University, recently retired, and on the right you see Associate Professor David Lewis from Adelaide Uni's Chemical Engineering Department, and those guys sort of brought the two technologies and the two universities together and did quite a lot of work. They advanced their... I should also mention that here the South Australian Government's SARDI organisation, they became actively engaged for a while as well. And a very positive outcome of their work was the establishment of the world-class facility at West Beach for studying the growth outdoors and indoors in these what they call bioreactors in closed areas and closed volumes. And there's facilities down there for anybody that wants to start trying to experiment with different strains of algae. They're welcome at a price to use this facility, and it's got quite extensive laboratory facilities with it as well. So Sadi did a little bit about it, and meanwhile the Murdoch and Adelaide unis advanced their collaboration, and they moved from the laboratories to small outdoor paddle wheel raceway ponds, which showed great promise, especially in terms of the growth rate and in terms of its salt tolerance. So you can see there smallish ponds outside the Murdoch University Ecology Department, and those ones on the right are actually on the top of the Adelaide University's Chemical Engineering building. And so that was a big step forward, and out of the total process you see there, all those squares, they follow a route as to where we are at the present time. And the first three up there we call our research phase, and that being successful led to the university submitting an application to the government funding, for government funding under what was called the AP6 program, which was Asia Pacific, 6 continents, 6 countries I should say, around the Pacific Ring, the United States, China, India, Australia, possibly Korea, and I think Canada was in it as well. And so under this grant we put in an application, and this was to build a pilot plant at Karratha up in Western Australia, and the application was successful, and the pilot plant was built, and it was centred around 3 200 square metre area ponds. That's the Waiata plant you see there. You see some water storage tanks and 3 200 square metre raceway ponds, and at the top is the get someone on the screen. They're smaller ponds, and there's even smaller ones here for inoculating and growing the algae strain before it gets put into the larger ponds. The buildings are a laboratory and a workshop and things like that. So in putting in their application, a precursor to success was that they needed to stipulate, it was stipulated they had to have financial support from the private sector, not just a laboratory, not just a sort of an R&D or a research program. And that support came about at a conference down at the Sadi establishment down at West Beach. It just happens that the 2 universities were there, as was we from SQC, sort of bumped into each other, and we at SQC were only making rather modest progress with the advancement of our freshwater strains, and lots of discussions, and we decided that there would be a lot of future in getting together with the universities, and by putting in private money that ensured that we got the grant. Now there we have a elevation, if you like, of the large, as we thought they were at the time, 200 square metre ponds at Karratha, and here we see what's left of the Karratha pilot plant as we speak. We were required to put down after a couple of years of operation and return the land to Rio Tinto, where it was built on a power station of theirs, and remove all infrastructure, etc. Well, that was pretty useful because we went through the rather expensive, it was cheaper than buying new sheds and things, and we brought lots and lots, including the fence down to Waiata to build our plant there. And we say, well, that was pretty useful. That particular part of our program, where we learned an enormous amount from the construction and the operation of the plant, the KPP, Karratha Pilot Plant, we turned in a very, very short time, as I mentioned, 2 years. We learned one hell of a lot, both technologically and certainly in terms of capital requirements to build a plant of this type, and also in operating costs. This was the completion of what we termed the development phase. Now, that led us once again, and the universities and SQC having joined together, formally we created this company, Muradel, which then applied for an ARENA Advanced Biofuels Investment Readiness Grant, or an ABIR grant, to design and build a demonstration plant at Waiata. And the application was successful, and we were awarded $4.4 million Again, it was dependent upon there being private enterprise involvement as well, but that was quite chiefly given by SQC and a construction started up there at Whyalla. And now, with a bit of luck and thanks to the government and technical staff, we should have a video. Yes, we can have a video. We want this to be a place where other organisations can come and try their elderly strains as well. Now, as I say, this algae mixture goes through electrophoculation through a centrifuge, and that's a more storage on the site. We bring that in from the sea, but we've also got a couple of bores which have proven to be quite interesting. We hope we might be able to do it all through bores in the not-too-distant future. Anyway, it goes to that's laboratories and the like there. That is a rather important shed. That's where our special plant I was talking about earlier, that's where that's located. And you can see the sort of land that it's built in. It's like land that's not much good for anything else. You can hardly call it arable land. So that took us to the end of that, what we call commercial demonstration phase, which is where we are at the present time. Now, construction began in 2013, and remarkably the MDP, Muradel demonstration plant was ready for commissioning at the end of June of this year. And despite sort of quite unseasonable weather, this was achieved, and despite the fact that we had to employ something like 120 different contractors and muddy boots and things, and it was quite a challenge for our people, but they came through with flying colours. Now, I should at this point say that many of you are thinking, well, what's so different about that? They've been growing algae for a long, long time for all sorts of other products, and they have. And coincidentally, one of them's up at Whyalla, so when you see here, that was a bit there, that is a plant not very far from our plant, very, very big of course, and this one is a place called Hutt Lagoon in Western Australia, and they're both used with a different strain of algae altogether, and they're used for growing for the algae that they take beta-carotene from, etc. So what I really wanted to try to say was, if you thought that we're Johnny come lately, yes we are in the overall business of algae growing, but not when it comes to growing it for crude oil. Producing crude oil economically from various algae species at scale has been attempted by numerous companies worldwide, but to this point with reasonably fairly limited success, I would say. Our focus remains on production of green crude sustainably from Tetraselma species, for which we hold all the IP produced by the Murdoch University and by the Adelaide University, and by everything that's been produced up at Karratha and what we've done already at Whyalla. So there's a massive and fairly decent portfolio of IP. Now, well, it summarises what I'm on about. We've got the first step is growing the algae, the second step is the electrophoculation centrifuge, the third is this remarkable subcritical water reactor, and the third bit that forms kerogen, which is then processed to provide the green crude oil. That's, as I say, like any other crude oil really, and we've had various experiments where we've had this stuff put in amongst normal crude oil to the extent of 10 or 20%, and it goes through a refining process, and it just comes out the same as all the other drop-in type fuels. But what I did want to point out was this, what I was referring to earlier, because of the success of our critical water and subcritical water process, we've been able to convert several other sorts of biomasses as well. And this one at the top is very interesting. This is biomass from sewage plants, and that gets amassed around the world and nobody really knows what to do with it. It's in great big heaps. And we think we've been doing a little bit of work with a rather large sewage organisation in Australia, and they're quite encouraged by what they've seen, as are we. This is, we're talking about microalgae being seaweed, or some of these strains that are a damn nuisance in parts of the world. I think this particular picture is taken of a lake in China where this stuff just goes crazy. I don't really know how to get rid of it, and what we're doing might be quite useful there. And also seaweed in the Isle of Man, they tell us, is a real nuisance, and they think there might be some use for us over there. This here is a plant called agave, and it's probably got a future in this business because it grows in land which is pretty useless for anything else as well. It's like a cactus type of a thing, and they are planting it with and growing with some success in parts of Adelaide, Queensland. So they're just three examples of some other biomasses that very well go to there, come out of storage and be converted to green crude. Now, a little bit about algae in general. There are thousands and thousands of species, and there's hundreds and hundreds of strains per species, and there's 5 of them for you, but they're, as you can see, very, very different, and they tend to not being beautiful, some of them. There are various strains. I don't know whether they're sold or fresh, probably fresh. This is the freshwater strain called Botrococcus that we were working on. This is the one that was called Reservoir. This is the one that was we worked on at Port Lincoln for quite a long time. Very, very nice, produces a lot of oil. The trouble is that it takes about 4 or 5 or even 6 days to double in its mass, and that means you're going to have a whole lot of area converted to ponds, so it's better if you get something that doubles in a much shorter period than that. This is the Tetrasalmus strain. It looks like a sort of a 10 micrometers there. It looks like a sort of a small tadpole, isn't it? But it's been very, very valuable from our point of view. So they're very different in terms of growth rates, in terms of nutrient requirements, in terms of what's in them, the content of them, salt tolerances, reactions to various chemicals and compounds and elements and the like. They can be quite competitive with one another, and under certain sets of circumstances, 1 or 2 of the strains might get to monopolise, and the one you're trying to grow might be very second-rate in a matter of half a day or a day, because those strains have moved in on it. To grow, most of them need sunshine. I suppose they all need sunshine, water, nutrients and carbon dioxide, and there's an optimum pH for them. Very few of them can flourish in high salinity water, and the identification and isolation of this particular, and incubation of this particular strain that we're working with is very, very, would be very key to our success. So there's a bit of a summary of what we said there. Algae produce, this is a quite important point really. When you want to grow crops for biofuels, I mean they call it generation 3 biofuels are the ones coming from algae. Generation 1 was ones from food crop. Generation 2 was the ones from terrestrial plants, not food crops necessarily, but still ones that require arable land, and ones apart from the agaves and other cacti, they require a fair amount of fresh water and arable soil. But the sort that we're using doesn't, it needs salty water. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if I mentioned this one of ours thrives in salinities. It's actually double the salinity of seawater, and it's quite happy in salinity of up to 4 times that of seawater. So there you go, they grow so quickly it's daily harvesting and pretty continuous. I like to use the expression that never might have taken nature 1.5 billion years to do it, but we can do it in about 2 or 3 days. Very few, because very few can flourish in this very high salinity, it cuts out this competition. So when we get our stock going, we hardly have any problem at all with infestation by other strains. And we've had a little bit of it, but people have worked out how you overcome these various intruders. They don't need fresh water, they don't need arable land, etc. I've said, a little by way of nutrients. That's another good thing. They need very little by way of nutrients, and that keeps farmers reasonably happy because the degree to which we can recycle the nutrients is very, very high, and it's got to keep the music that we have to top up all that very much. Now, Australia possesses huge tracts of non-arable land, as we all know, and it's the next one, arable land that we know, and little by, due to recycling, we don't use much of it. So Australia really possesses huge tracts of non-arable land, adjacent to huge reserves of salty water at sea, but also inland. There's a hell of a lot of salty water inland in Australia, and therefore we think there's going to be a case for putting our sorts of plant in more remote areas where there's mines and things like that, also salty water, and we can do the whole thing producing, going all the way from algae to usable fuels. Now then, why, leads to the question, why are we doing all this? Well, we think that the need for liquid transport fuels is going to be around for some considerable time. Hopefully it won't always grow at that sort of rate, but that shows you the red columns are the non-OECD countries, and the blue columns are the OECD countries. So a bit of a tapering off in the blue area because maybe we're getting a bit more efficient, etc. We're using public transport. Anyway, but you can see there's going to be huge growth in the non-OECD countries, and we think there'll be a great need for the fuels as we know them at the present time. Liquid fuels are pretty much the most practical for transport anyway. Also, we've got to make the point that national prosperities and securities depend quite a lot on transport fuels, their availability and at what price you can get them. And it leads me to another very important issue, and that is, what are the global reserves of fossil fuels? Anybody like to take a guess? Because nobody really knows, I don't think, or if they do, they don't tell you. But I say, well, may we ask, because here in Australia, for example, the reserves of crude oil, as generally accepted, are about 30,000 petajoules put into a heat unit, and the use is about 1.5 or 2 petajoules of oil per annum in this country, and we already import 50% of what we need, and so another all that flash when it comes to oil reserves. Now, some countries got coming out their ears, as we all know, and I don't suppose what we're doing will be very interesting in some of those countries, or you never know, they might, the consciences might get to them. But another point about is I'll go back to this slide. You notice that with the fossil fuels, the way they're produced at the present time, they dug up and burn, and CO2 goes into the air. That's that. You get some more, and it'll go into the air as well, and more until it's all gone. Now, the footprint, that's not really all that nice, and there's been plenty of money spent on technologies for sequestering CO2, burying it in wood gas wells and things, but I don't know what your idea of the success of those programs have been to date, but I think they've got a long way to go. And the other thing I've mentioned a couple of times is that I don't really see that biofuels as we've known them up to now have got a big role to play, because they've been mostly in freshwater strains and taking the place of food crops. So the next point is about the price of oil, what's that going to do, you reckon? I mentioned the dreadful situations occurred in the 70s when suddenly the price of crude went up like that and like that. It's come down in the meantime. You'd have to call a loss on maybe, wouldn't you, if you didn't call it like a yo-yo. And who knows how that's going to be in the future. The other point to mention is that when we talk about the price of fuel, once upon a time, this chart suggested in 1930 the energy balance, if you consumed 1 barrel of oil, that's all you needed to produce 100 barrels of oil. But by the time we got to 2011, they were saying, well now, because the oil fields are more remote and they're deeper wells than the Caribbean Sea and other places like that, then the cost of producing them is getting much higher because you get much less in terms of the output than what you put in. And I noticed that they're going to drill a few wells off the south of the country here, off the Great Australian Bight. And I think they're going to drill 3 exploratory wells. I think each one's going to cost $1 billion or something like that. So without doubt, the cost of producing oil is getting to be very, very expensive as well. Now, I'm a gas graduate. I spent 50 years in the gas industry. I've got to say it's great stuff, but it's much, much cleaner with a much, much better carbon to hydrogen ratio than the oil fuels. But even it is a finite resource and it comes up, and I really mention this because Australia has got reserves of approximately, it depends on who you believe again, but the official government report says that it's about, I don't know, 150,000 petajoules as opposed to 30 of oil, and other people say it's way up around 600,000 or 700,000 petajoules. So there's lots of it, but it's going to suffer from this business of carbon footprints as well. And we're exporting, as of next year, we're going to be exporting about 3 times as much as we actually use ourselves. Anyway, what you might say is that with these last slides, what we seem to be is in a bit of a rut, I would say. We have been in this bit of a rut since the introduction of the internal combustion engine and the great growth in the number of cars and trucks and ships and planes that are running on oil-type fuels. And so I suppose you could supply this goodly proportion, shall we say, of the world's transport energy needs by growing microalgae and doing it the way we're endeavouring to do at the present time, then surely that would be a better prospect than just drilling forever and not knowing how far we've got to go and adding to our difficulties with the CO2 release as well. So, to summarise again, sustainable, absorbs CO2, I've got a slide. It's sustainable, it absorbs CO2 to grow, only needs smallish areas of useless land, only needs seawater and salty water, doesn't compete with the food chain, inputs are sunshine and CO2 analysis, etc. Energy ratio, positive, you get more, you've got to put a bit of energy into the processes I described earlier on, but the net result is that the energy you get out of the algae fuel is more than what you put in, so that's an important positive. And also it's got a substantially, well, I'd say significantly lower carbon footprint than fossil fuel. I'd love to have a slide here to show you some sort of a number on that, and we're working on it. But we have had independent life cycle analyses conducted, and the performers of those analyses have said this is very definitely energy positive, there's very definitely a significant downturn in carbon footprint. The answer to the question, so why are we doing this, I think is quite simply, well, why on earth wouldn't you do it? We must seek an alternative, we must get started seriously, I think, with volume production of the 3rd generation biofuels. Now, where do we stand as of now? We've settled on a strain where you're pretty good at inoculation and pretty good at operating raceway ponds and the technologies and the flocculating and the centrifuging and the subcritical water reactors and the extraction. We haven't got extraction of oil yet, but that's not a big problem because that's a reasonably straightforward process. We only can get one made, which is about the size that we need to take the output from the pilot, from the demonstration plant. We've integrated them into a more or less continuous production process, and all of the above is based on a 1 acre pond, 4,000 square metres that is, and we've got to realise that because of the success we've had with the acre pond, 4,000 square metres, we're quite confident that a 10,000 square metre pond, or if you prefer, a hectare pond will work just as well. And therefore, if we want to build a great big farm of 100 or 1,000 hectares, then it would be we're looking at these things as modules. And we've also had a study underway to get up to date outside opinion as to what the design might look like, how these modules will be put together, and what the capital cost might be, and an assessment of what the operating cost would be. Now, the plant up at Whyalla, it will produce something like somewhere between 25 or 30,000 litres per annum based on an acre. So we go to 100 hectares, and that would produce something in the order of 6 million litres. And if we go to a 1,000 hectare pond, then that would be producing something in the order of 60 million litres per annum of actual crude. Now, 60 million is a big number, but those of you who are in the oil industry will realise that that's not very much at all compared with what is produced. And I don't know, but I think it's around about 4 or 5% of what is produced in the Murdoch gas fields. So it's not a lot. However, it's only 1,000 acres, and there's plenty of areas where there's 1,000 acres to spare here in Australia. So we expect, investors willing, that we'll build a 100 hectare plant. They have it in operation by about 2017, and we will certainly have plans and everything under control to get bigger than that. Once again, investors willing to build 1,000 hectare plants, not only here in Australia, but globally. So, we are getting quite an amount of publicity as a result of the Whyalla plant, and our Chief Executive Officer, Dr. David Lewis, who was the guy that you saw earlier on, who was leader of the chemical engineering party at Adelaide Uni. David has joined us for a couple of years, and he's our CEO. He sort of called upon to speak around the world. You wouldn't believe it. He got back at the weekend from a week in the US as a keynote speaker at the biggest algae conference that the world has, and then he went from there to Japan to talk to some people who want to talk to us about the subcritical water process, and then he went on to India. We've got backers there, financial backers, and they want to have us build a sort of a pilot SCWR plant for them as well. They want us to build us here, would you believe, and maybe take it over there and commission it, etc. So there was a big article about us in a British journal just a couple of weeks ago, and we're I've always encouraged our people to concentrate on performance and not promotion, but now I think we've got to the stage of the demo plant that we're in a position where the performance is pretty nearly guaranteed, and it is time for promotion, so always probably couldn't come at a better time. Now, as I mentioned, that item of plant, that critical thing is special, and we've found, to our delight, it can convert biomass from sources other than microalgae to green crude, as mentioned, and mentioned the sort of biomass you can put in there. So it's quite possible that before we actually become commercially viable working with microalgae, we might very well become commercial by working with some of these other feedstocks. Now, this presentation that was intended to be of a general nature and not overly technical, and certainly not over commercial or financial, but I've got a couple of slides up there that might interest you. It's about the three components that we see of our overall business plan. And the first one is the main, in other words, growing algae and getting other sorts of biomass and converting to crude oil and selling to refineries, or maybe taking it a step further in remoter, more remote areas, refining it ourselves to provide a usable fuel for earth-moving equipment, etc., etc. That's the big thing. But secondly, this build and operate plants, as I mentioned, a rather large sewage treatment organisation was a bit interested in us building, for starters, a plant, maybe a conversion plant about as big as the one at Whyalla, and using it in their place, and then if that's as successful as we all think it will be, they would like us to maybe build a plant, a bigger one, and maybe we might get to be the owners, or somebody else might want to. The sewage authority don't want to actually run it themselves, but they're looking to somebody to build it, to operate it for them. I might say that this biomass, I hesitate to call it market, but the quantities of it around the world are staggering, and there's a sewage farm up Queensland way that pay $50 a tonne to have people come and take this stuff away. So it'd be nice to start off an operation where you got your feedstock for free, or where you got paid to take it away. So as I mentioned, it's possible that before we'll those things. But anyway, that's the second area that we might be able to get into, doing those things in other people's properties, or just selling the plant for maybe third parties to do it. And the third one is actually quite useful. We've been asked to take samples of biomass and convert them and give the owners of the biomass some appreciation as to what it could turn into, and what yields might be, and how much it might cost, etc., etc. So it's a sort of a consultant role that we might be able to make a quid out of. This last, as I say, we're not really wanting to get all that involved financially, but just thought it might be interesting for you to see that in our current estimates, we've got estimates of rates of return and net present values and payback periods, and for the three components that I mentioned before. And you'll see on the bottom there that the payback is really quite spectacular when you get this free biomass, and it's not too bad for the algae itself anyway. And I just mentioned here who the shareholders are at the present time. When we kicked off Muradel, the two universities each owned 33% as did SQC, but because SQC's put in a hell of a lot of money since, they're up to the stage where the unis own 10% each and SQC owns 80%. There we go. I'd now just like to say, I think the numbers are fairly encouraging, I hope you would agree. I wanted to say, what could this possibly mean for South Australia? We all worry a fair bit about that lately, about where the state's going and what we can do, etc. We're all very conscious of the fact that the state's been way up the front there in alternative fuels and the like, and we would like to think that we might be able to contribute to that pace, and we think it could mean quite a lot to the state if we would get this thing going to make it as commercial as we think it could be. So if we're going to build a 1,000 hectare operation in Whyalla, well, that we, as I say, we're getting much more accurate figures on how much it would cost to build, and a bit more information on what the plant might look like. It mightn't just look like 1,000 of the sorts of modules you see at Whyalla at the moment. It might need, for example, polyethylene lining. It might be able to do it some other way, much cheaper, etc., etc. But we think the way things are at the moment, there might be 200 million invested to build a plant like that. There might be something like 100 jobs created. There might be peak revenue of 100 million a year. And of course, it's a big step forward in regional development. Rural renewal, I refer to this sort of thing as in the States. So, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I'd like to thank you once again for the opportunity to address you and bring you sort of up to speed what it is we see as a major step forward in the biofuels sphere. And I would like to invite you to, as it says here, watch this space. I wish I could say that we were commercial of it now, but we think pretty close, and we're now out there looking for people who might be interested to invest with us. So I would finish by acknowledging a few bodies that have helped us. SQC, of course, our major commercial partner, the ABAN group from India, the R&D people at Muradel and the University of Adelaide, and we've still got quite close connections with Murdoch University, and they've been fantastic, of course. And we've spent, we're very conscious of the fact that we've spent $4.5 million of taxpayers' money on the ABR grant, and we got about $2 million to do the Karatha plant, and we're very, very grateful for the sort of government support that we've had. And I'm apolitical, but the fact is, if you didn't have governments that would step in and help you to do these things, you wouldn't get very far. So there you go, folks. Now, I think if there might be a question or two out there, I'd be only too happy to try and answer them. Got a few answers.
How separate can the supply and the plant be? I'm thinking of developing countries where you could have small farmers all over the place growing algae, low tech, there's a central processing plant to convert it down into biofuel. Can they be separate, or does the algae need to be kept alive and transferred to the processing plant fairly quickly?
Very good question. We had one of the reasons why the ABAN group is so supportive of us, an Indian company. They are actually people who make a quid by drilling for all the big oil companies and all the small oil companies and whichever oil companies will allow them to drill for them. But one of their major reasons for getting into this business in the first place was because of their awareness of the fact that lots of parts of India have got no power and no energy really, and they've got, all those sorts of facilities. And this they saw as maybe the sort of opportunity to do this sort of thing in the more remote areas. And so do we, but your question is a pretty good one. I can see that you could maybe have ponds, 100 hectares there and everywhere, and maybe you could, grow your algae and harvest it there, but take it travels reasonably. We're only going to freeze it, but you can take it to a plant that's not too far distant from several of these types of places and take some oil back and maybe generate a bit of power that way, etc.
So you can't dry it in that water, is it?
You can't dry it. You can, but then you've got to wet it again when you put it through the processing. There's plenty of scope there, I'd say. You see?
Have you done any modelling on the barrel of oil cost relative to what they currently get out of the ground? And how efficient in terms of energy output is your oil versus the current type? Is it equivalent or better or less?
Well, it's if you only have to put in a barrel of oil to produce about 6 barrels of crude, then that's a pretty good footprint. But what we're endeavouring to do is to make it so it's at least better than 1, so that the energy you get out when you produce the oil is less than the energy you put in when you made it. And then, of course, when you burn the fuel, CO2 is liberated, etc. But a hell of a lot of that is then absorbed again when you grow the oil the next time around.
So your production process, the end result would be a cheaper product.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to the price, that is something that's been very high in our thought process at all times. And we think that we're going to be able to make it around about, I don't know, between $1 and $1.20 a barrel, or something, $100 or $120 a barrel, or something of that magnitude. So we think that we're getting, when we started it was hundreds of dollars, but Karatha got it down a lot, Wales got it down a lot more. And without knowing quite how much more efficient the plant can be once we get, something like a more fair and designed for a big plant and better estimates by these experts who, KBR, no doubt, and they're people who are doing the feasibility studies and they'll give us a much better indication of capital costs and also operating costs and how automatic we can make it, etc., etc. But we think there's another, I won't say order of magnitude, but there is another big step forward to be taken in reducing the price. And we reckon, 100, $120 is not beyond the pale. Yep.
You separate the algae to get the oil out. Do you end up with sort of a large amount of waste algae, or is it feedstock that you give to animals, or do you feed it back into the thing and they digest it back, or what?
The algae is converted it goes into the reactor and that's it. It never comes out as algae again. It comes out as some water and this kerogen and sort of salty water and a few other bits and pieces. Some elements that we wish weren't there, but they are, but we can remove them. So the algae has been sort of continuously growing and taken out and processed and good by algae, but there's more growing all the time. On a summer's day in Moyle, I mean, you know, it doubles the day. And also, when we were at Karratha, did some spectacular growth too. And a lot of people say to us, why the hell did you ever move from Karratha? And we say, well, a few reasons. It's cost us $70,000 a year to hire a house up there for our staff. And nobody was really very interested in teamwork up there. It was all about making the quid. And it was just much better to do it in a place like Wales where there's a fair bit of skill around, you know, tradespeople and others. And no, I think, you know, we sort of make the right decisions there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, in the past, before your process, the basic problem, or one of the major problems with microalgae is that is once you take your fairly dilute slurry and making it more concentrated, well, obviously the idea of electroflocculation sounds a pretty interesting way of doing it. Just without going into sort of IP areas, basically how are you going about doing that? Do you add material that is absorbed onto the microalgae and that use that to help flocculate it? Or?
No, it's a process that was developed at the University of Adelaide, as a matter of fact, and it's not. I don't know that it's, you know, there's lots of little tricks and things to it for sure, but it's basically very low voltage direct current, aluminium electrodes with this stuff moving along a corridor which connects the paddle wheel pond to the settling tank. So beyond that, not much. That probably gets it to about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10% percentage by weight in water. And by the time, that's a sort of a slurry, and then by the time it comes out as a paste from a centrifuge operation, it's probably about 20% algae in the water. We won't do something there.
It's always been a really basic problem with microalgae in that concentration process.
Yep.
That initial concentration. How do you do it without expending too much energy?
Well, I think I think our team sort of have it right, the right concentration and the right sort of salinity with the right nutrients, so it just sort of keeps growing. You take out this stuff and you add more water to the pond, and we add salt if we want to get the salinity out of it. Yeah.
Sorry. If you're using salt water, you reckon you get quite a lot of evaporation up there at Wales, so the salinity will just keep increasing.
Yeah.
Is that a problem after time?
If you do the sums, I couldn't believe this at the little ponds that were the big ponds at the time, but at Karratha, I thought, well, they're going to become too silent in no time. But when you work out the maths of it or the arithmetic and a bit of rain and one thing or another, it was going to take something like 6 months before it needed to be diluted. And now it's even better because we now know that it will operate in salinity up to 4 times the salinity of seawater. So a little bit of evaporation and concentration is good. If you start with seawater and there's a bit of evaporation and concentrates, but no, that's all positive. So,
that largely answered my question because I was asking about the effect of the salinity of the processing. I think that's answered. The other question was about the nutrients that you need to put in. I mean, if you're using waste, obviously it's got huge amounts of nutrients, but what you're talking about, what sort of nutrients do you need to put in?
yeah, well, it's, I think it's basically, you could say the NPK, but we do have, it's really funny, we built the plant at Karratha on the site of a gas-fired power station belonging to Rio, and we were going to use the CO2, which would be pretty pure from the stack. Anyway, so we forgot to build, well, the bloody flange on the bottom of the stack, so we didn't ever get to do that. However, now that we're at Whyalla, we've got you know, I wanted to point out the music was a bit much for me with the video, but you could see a couple of points. One was the terrain, which is sort of useless for any other purpose, but you can see the sea being fairly close to it on some shots, and you can see the steelworks there as well, with its chimneys and the like. Now, they produce, they are not unlike the gasworks of old. They've got to make metallurgical coke, so they carbonise it, and they produce ammonia for one thing out of it, and they produce CO2 like you wouldn't believe. And we think once we get to 100 hectares even, or certainly 1,000, we're hoping that steelworks will continue to be viable, but there would be some merit, I think, in bringing the CO2 to our site and bringing the ammonia and things like that as well. It'd be a pretty marvellous thing if you actually clean up somebody else's operation, and it's to the benefit of what you're doing yourself. And there's a big organisation at Boyalla which works on that. They call it synergies, and they sort of talk about one person's waste products being other one's feedstocks, etc. So there's plenty of potential there for nutrients as well.
So you could be paid perhaps in the future to clean up these sort of industries.
Well, yeah, well, we hope that we might
Pay them and get the feedstock.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm not opposed to it.
You talk about lots of area of useless land, but I wonder whether you consider this tyranny of distance. So you have a product stuck out somewhere, and how are you going to transport it to a place to refine it, and then from there to its user form? Have you sort of taken that into consideration in terms of your model?
Yep. We note that at Boyalla there's a pipe comes down from Murdoch, and it goes on the wharfs and it goes on the ships and goes to refineries of their choice. And we think that Boyalla's off to, if we can get in a bed with Santos or Beach or Origin, who are the major interested parties in the Murdoch areas, then that would be fairly useful. That would be good. But I noticed in passing that now, not only does the oil and the LP gas mixed up and come down to Point Lowry from Moomba, but also they truck it in from, would you believe, Marini and the northwest of South Australia, where there's another bit of an oil find recently, and they truck it enormous distances, and we can't help thinking, well, a lot closer than that. That's that one, but it's a good question for other areas, and that's why we think, for example, they tell us there's a fair amount of salty water at Olympic Dam in between the surface and where they get the fresh water from. So, you never know whether a remote area like that might be useful to us. It's the reverse of what you're saying. It could be that being able to do it remotely is a big plus for people who have to take their petrol and diesel long distances to use it. Another one that's rather interesting was that at Mildura there's a lot of salty water, they tell us, under the Murray River, and they take it out and they make pink salt out of it, and they sell that in special little containers and everybody goes for it. But they think that they'd love us to be able to do something up there, and that's not exactly remote at Mildura, but it is getting out there.
What about other, stockpile claims and other than the Waverley and Barmer and Berry, where SA Water have their solid interception schemes? Have you been talking with them as well?
I see that as pretty much the same potential as Mildura, to be honest with you. I do think there's a lot of scope, but people have mentioned that to us. In fact, who was it just the other day? Somebody from up that area was talking about whether there'd be potential for it. And, it all depends on how much salty water there is and what the market might be. And I think another thing is, if we can get our plants, like Nancy's earlier question, small enough so that they're sort of packages you can put in places, then there'll be a lot of scope for that sort of thing. So,
it sounds as if it's fairly difficult for the water one in terms of the amount of energy you invest and the amount of energy out. Is the energy input primarily electrical, and are you basing that energy out equation on the electrical energy or the energy required to generate the electricity that you're using?
all all of the above, whatever sort of energy goes into it. Let me see, it's mostly electrical, but it's not, it's surprisingly little. We were pretty chuffed when we were first doing our work up at Karratha, and we calculated and measured how much electricity had to go into the flocculation process. It was very little, and the boys thought we could do it with a few solar panels. At that scale, that was quite small. And as a matter of fact, we've been successful when we've been awarded a grant to design and provide a solar energy plant to be built up on the Whyalla demo. So that would be pretty useful too, I think. Yes, sir. Yep, sorry. Yes.
What other forms of energy?
What else would it be? Let me see. We've got, standby electricity, of course, which is liquid fuel or gas, but we've got... No, it mostly would be electricity, I suppose. The paddle wheels take very, very little energy. And the SCWR, the subcritical water reactor, that's one of its great big strengths. It's remarkably energy efficient. The actual finish up of the energy you've got to put in to heat the stuff up to 300 degrees where it is almost, but it's wonderful. It's a great piece of equipment.
So that's a combustion process?
That is electrical coils around it. However, the reactor's a bit of a special thing. I wish that we'd actually designed it, but we got onto it and we've got exclusive rights to it in all the areas that we want to work in at the present time. So we're quite happy and quite comfortable with that. But it is a rather remarkable piece of equipment. Yep.
Is there a critical amount for getting to your final product of the biofuel at the end? Is there must be? To actually go through that process, you will need a certain amount of kerosene or whatever you're using.
We're sort of thinking in terms of 1,000 hectares and whatever I said, 60 million litres, but if that's 5 or 6% or something of mover production, then you need, a few of them, and you'd be making some significant contribution, I think, to the carbon footprint and everything else, jobs, etc. Yes. I didn't get that, sorry.
Does your energy require to be done 24/7, or can it just run inside that 24 hours?
It is running 24/7, it's pretty interesting. This whole process, a bloke by the name of Andreas Listevsky, I don't know whether you noticed in the video, but there was a shot of a bloke standing up in the pond. That was meant to show that they're somewhere between about 200 and 300 millimetres deep only. And his name is Andreas Listevsky, and he's a guy who wrote a thesis on this whole, he's from the Murdoch University, that's where he did his thesis, and it was all about the sorts of things you mentioned, the energy input and how you can minimise it, etc., etc. But to get to your actual question, I'm still struggling to understand.
I think putting that single solar panel in that.
Does it run?
Oh. Well, I suppose I don't see any reason why you couldn't be as up to date as they are with storage and everything as it is at the present time. Generate it and use it with the way so you can use it all night. Funny thing with algae, sometimes some strains actually stop growing at night. Others, in some of the bioreactors, they actually grow without much light in them at all, remarkably, but we're not into that area. Also, I suppose I should mention that you would always read a lot about people mucking around and biomodifying, genetically modifying strains of algae and other. And I don't know that there's very much of that happening. ExxonMobil put in something like $200 or $300 million to research institute in the US to do a bit of that sort of thing, to get a better species which would grow quicker, and they pretty much gave it away in the finish. But our strain is perfectly normal. Matter of fact, it was actually isolated on Rottnest Island, you know, over there off the coast of Perth, and that particular strain, 4 or 5 of the strains were picked up there, and we've been working to determine which is the best one for to meet all of our needs.
Is yours a public company now, or is it all private?
It's all private now at the present time, but we are getting to the stage where we want to see if we're going to go to if we're going to need another 20 million to build a 100 hectare plant or something, then we'll be having to go out for IPO for sure. We're sort of getting to that stage.
What's the optimum temperature range for algae to grow? What's the optimum seawater temperature range?
Depends on the strains, but generally speaking, they're great between about 25 and 35, I suppose, degrees in the water itself, I suppose. But ambient temperatures of the Corona magnitude are pretty good. And Moella's got this thing they keep telling us, there's 301 days of sunshine. That's pretty important. We believe it, or we wouldn't have spent all that money. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
I'm pretty sure I saw that a firm's going to build a diesel refiner out there as well. So that means if you can get a feedstock that's suitable for that, you don't need to go to the final step yourself if you upscale it.
Yeah, that's true. It's Mitsubishi, and
yes.
I don't know that this is going to be a refiner. I think it's going to be just something for. I don't know. It might just be. No, they're taking LP gas out there already and something, but I don't think it's a very complex thing. I think it's more about storage of diesel for the transport industry than it is about producing it. But time will tell. Yes, sir, David.
A couple of things. And at some point, you're going to have to dispose of the giant enormous amount of salt. Have you got a plan for that?
Yes, we think so. We think there are people who are interested in taking this off our hands. There's a salt works at Whaler, as you probably know. We've got a little way to go in understanding how much we're going to produce and whether it's going to be suitable, but the indications are reasonably positive at this time. One of the big ponds you saw there was the evaporation pond to get to the salt level, the one that wasn't actually a paddle oil pond. So we're starting to get a bit of something to them. We'll be a little more fully across that in the medium term, I'll say.
Okay, so you've got a plan for salt, but you're also looking at taking salty water from aquifers.
Yeah.
That's really a bit of a double-edged sword there, because if you start pulling water from aquifers collapse. And is there a plan for putting water back into the aquifers in some way?
Well, I think that's very likely to be addressed in the design of the overall, if we get to the 1,000, I should say when we get to the 1,000 hectare stage, I think there'll be some sort of provision for that. Yeah, pretty complex when you come to think about it, but at the moment the water from underground is rather nice because it's a bit more saline than the seawater. It's got a few chemicals in it that are quite useful as nutrients. So we're doing a lot of work on that to take out some of the bits and pieces in that water aren't so helpful, and we're working on removing those, but overall it looks pretty good.
They're currently having a problem in China with collapsing aquifers due to having too much water taken out.
Is that so, is it?
Yeah, because we think that aquifers are giant spaces underground, and they're full of water, which currently holds the earth above it. As soon as you take all that water out of an aquifer, which is something we've talked about doing if you're into the thousands of hectares of evaporation, you start collapsing aquifers, which would mean that they can't recharge anymore, which has a lot of very good implications for their environment. Seawater,
yeah, well, you see, where we are with the steelworks across the road, they've got a big, they use seawater for cooling. They've got a big ditch and they take it through the plant and it runs back out. The salt works up there takes some of it and eventually it goes back out to sea. Now, one of the options available to us, maybe at the next stage, is to tap into that, and of course we're in pretty close collaboration with the steelworks as well as most of the other industries up there, so it could quite easily be that we maybe take that, pipe that into our plant when we get to 100 hectares size perhaps. Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to make a comment that plenty of companies taking vitamins of water out of the ground. They'll look at them and take huge amounts out of it.
It's big problems. Currently, they're dropping aquifers all the way around the outside of us farmers and putting water especially in the Mount Basin and various other places.
So low as the water table, I haven't had a something.
Yeah, but the thing is that the places, especially in Old China, they have very large demand for it, especially around cities. Because then
We might finish it off now and you can talk about understand it's an issue. I think they just need to set up beside a desal plant and they've got the salty water. They're away. Ollie, thank you. Excellent presentation. Copy of our Sanctuary magazine for you, which is a magazine that ATA publishes quarterly, and a bottle of sustainable wine for you. All right. A couple of announcements. The ATA has recently won been awarded $240,000 by Google to help with our LED lighting in Timor and solar panels. So that was there was a prize for $500,000 and we put a bid in, and through the voting, I think you've probably seen some of those in the emails. We got 240,000, so that's pretty good. Considering we normally get excited when we get 10,000 grants for that, that's a bit of money from Google. We've also got the library over there, which Maxine's running. So if you're an ATA member, I saw a few books came back tonight. So if you're looking for something, it's over there. And next month's meeting will be Frank Seeley from Seeley International, talking about the latest technology. And they've recently just put in a climate testing facility where basically they can drive the climate and make it winter or hot summer or humid summer to test their equipment within weeks, as opposed to waiting for next year's season to test their machinery. So I think that's a world first for Australia of that sort of level of testing, and I hope he's going to talk about that for us. We've got Q&A sessions. Anybody got any Q&As, problems you want to ask around? I know there was Greg here. He's got a solution to his problem, which was LED transformers.
Yes, I think I have that.
Yep. Okay. Good.
We've got a situation where we're building a new house and we think we're on solar at the moment. We're trying to work out how much actual energy we're using in the household and what size solar system we need to put on. We've been on solar energy for 6 years and we've got all the figures, but we don't think we've actually worked it out correctly. So we just need some help on that. When there's anyone here who's got more pointers in the right direction.
I reckon Aussie over there might be just your man.
That's the man. All right, we'll see you later.
Aussie used to lecture in solar technology at TAFE, so I think he's right up to speed on that stuff.
Depends if he's got teenage kids.
Is that?
Guests.
That's right. No, Aussie will give you a hand to work out your numbers, and also, you've probably got some modelling numbers on your new house, which is going to be hopefully lower than your current. So, yep. Any other questions, or we'll close off the meeting and tea and coffee? All right. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next month. Okay. Ciao.